Today on What's Next.
We've reached a point in our society where a conversation is I have to win and you have to lose.
I would just like to invite people to get curious about it and to tell stories and not to get into a debate about it.
That's how all persuasion works. The other person realizes they can, they might, they ought to change their mind.
Welcome to What's Next. I'm Mark Middleton, and I'm wondering, can we talk? I mean, we've become so polarized that having a conversation on anything beyond the weather risks having an aggressive argument. It seems like many topics, and I mean the most important topics, are just off the table these days because nobody wants to get involved in nasty name calling. Why does it seem like hate is winning? Why can't we have the beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King envisioned over 5 decades ago? Now, I'm not naive enough to think that we're going to come up with the answers today, but we are certainly going to pose the question. And I can't think of a better group to talk with this about than our Growing Bolder regulars, Amy Sweezy, Bill Schaefer, and Cecily Wilson. And Bill, let's start with you because you are quite the conversationalist. What do you love about a good conversation?
What I love about a good conversation is standing in front of a group of people telling story after story. But much to my surprise, Mark, I've kind of learned over time that it's more important to listen, actually listen to people than it is to talk, because lo and behold, you can learn something.
Amen to that, brother. And I think it's become more apparent than ever that, the big question is, how can we have authentic exchanges these days? I mean, conversations that lift us up rather than tear us down. There does seem to be this growing us versus them mentality. And it would be unfair to lay the blame at the feet of organized religion, but let's start there, because all religions have their own version of the golden rule. All religions at their core preach love thy neighbor. So why are we not getting that message? Well, we decided to pose that very question to the leaders of 4 different faiths: Rabbi Stephen Engel, the Imam Muhammad Musri, Reverend Katrina Jenkins, and Buddhist teacher Peter Carlson. They all came right here to Growing Bolder headquarters for what turned out to be a thought-provoking discussion. You can watch the entire video on growingbolder.com, but we've got some highlights for you today. So let's start with something from the rabbi that jumped out to Bill Schaefer.
We've reached a point in our society where a conversation is I have to win and you have to lose. My Judaism has been strengthened by getting to know the Imam. I didn't have to give up anything. I didn't have to weaken my position.
Thank you.
I strengthened myself, and that's what we have to get to. We have to get to a point where people understand, whether it's religious differences or gender identity or race or whatever it is, whatever our difference is, that we engage in conversation strengthens a person, it doesn't weaken them. Because that's become a myth, that's one of those norms. Conversation, you have to win the argument. Win the argument every time, but that's not what real conversation is about, right?
That's Rabbi Stephen Engel making the point, we are all stronger together. You guys get that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To have real conversations, you start to see that we're not so different from each other too, and like we said, better together. And that was one of the many interesting points the religious leaders had. Here's one picked out by Amy Sweezy from Reverend Katrina Jenkins.
What I have told people when they come into my office, as long as they don't disrespect me as a person, African-American female, and what have you, and as long as they're respectful, I'm willing to listen, even though it's hard for me. But a lot of times, I always listen to things that go against my belief system. So I have to create a space, right, where people can come, they can talk, and we can respect each other. I do it one conversation at a time. It might sound Pollyannish or what have you. If I can change 1 or 2 students' minds to have them to be able to go and be more open with people, then that's something that I try to do.
I do it one conversation at a time. That just so jumped out at me. I mean, because I am all about small bites, not with food necessarily, but when you're overwhelmed with some huge thing that you have to do, you just break it up, a task, you break it up into small little bites so you can do it. Same thing, you're not going to change people's opinions, you're not going to have a great conversation, except if you just do it with one person at a time and get them to see maybe your point, and of course, more importantly, you get to see their point.
It makes perfect sense. Easier said than done, though. And Cecily, I know that you like what the Imam, Muhammad Busri, had to say about where we're headed.
What historically has been for centuries one way, we lived in isolated communities, isolated faith communities. Everybody had their own ideas. Now there is one global community, and it's growing in number. And young people are seeing how similar they are, their needs, their wants. The walls are coming down, but because we are in a transition time, we keep measuring the old and not seeing the new. But I'm very hopeful that what emerges will be a global culture that respects every human, regardless of race, color, religion, what have you. And it's going to translate to a more peaceful world.
I literally loved what he said, because being a mother of two daughters, my youngest is 22 now, and her view and vision of the world is a lot different from when I was raised and how I grew up. And so it allows me, and it challenges me, to be a lot more inclusive, understanding, and empathetic, and seeing people from a different lens. And I love that opportunity to be able to do that, because I really feel that the hope for tomorrow is even greater, to have a more peaceful global society. So thank you for that.
Amen to that, Cecily. I think we all put a lot of hope and have a lot of faith in this younger generation. And I think we all want to believe that a global culture of respect is where we're headed. But the truth of the matter is that many in the media benefit from division. I remember back in the day when we were all news anchors, you never really took sides. Today they build an audience by taking sides, and at times by spreading lies. They are literally monetizing hate, which is something that the Buddhist teacher Peter Carlson pointed out.
I believe that a major problem of our time is the double-edged sword that media is. On the one hand, we have more opportunities to communicate now than ever before worldwide. On the other hand, some particular aspects of our culture have usurped that and made conflict and power to be more important than community. This issue of the contentiousness really presents a significant obstacle to us moving forward as a culture.
You know, he is absolutely right. The internet has given everyone a voice, and it's magnified the voices of those who want to scream the loudest. We all have to be aware of what we're consuming, where it's coming from, who it's coming from, and what their motives might be, because a lot of people have an agenda that is not based on fact. We appreciate the rabbi, the imam, the reverend, and the Buddhist teacher for taking time to sit down with us. We hope that you will check out our entire interfaith roundtable conversation at growingbolder.com.
Most things in life, like most things that we really enjoy, are not a on and an off.
Welcome back, everybody, to What's Next. I'm Bill Schaefer, and man, social media sure has helped us connect. But has it really? We sure spend a lot of time liking posts, but not very much time with face-to-face, genuine conversations anymore, especially with people who see things differently than we do. Dr. Deetra Hawkins is a clinical psychologist who specializes in getting people with some seriously different viewpoints to really communicate, to worry less about convincing and more about understanding.
Where we're stuck at is what I call a false binary. So the binary is an either or, it's a yes, no. And so debate is what moves us into that binary kind of way of thinking. And we want to just be aware that most things in life, like most things that we really enjoy, are not a on and an off. So a good meal like has all kinds of different flavors in it. You know, wonderful music has a full range of different, you know, chords and different voices and different instruments. So the more that we lean into the things that really give us life and like help us like feel alive, it's not so much that simplicity of a yes, no, the black, white kind of thing. And so we can be much more curious, and we can start to hold ourselves and then our society, or like our media, for example, more accountable, where instead of them just sharing with us two sides of something, let's see 3 or 4 different sides. I mean, a great, area right now that people are talking a lot about is the whole, question around critical race theory, right? And I would just like to invite people to get curious about it and to tell stories and not to get into a debate about it, to actually lean in with that curiosity and say, I wonder why this is so important to people.
Dr. Hawkins says another reason we get stuck is because we constantly think in terms of right and wrong, but different viewpoints come from different life experiences. And when we understand that, we start to see that we're not really so far apart after all. We've all had to deal with this, so let's find out what our panel has to say. Let's start with Amy. Amy, how have you dealt with different thinking people in your life?
Yeah, I loved what you said about, the right and the wrong, because it's not just right and wrong, it's I'm right and you're wrong, right? And everybody thinks they have the right answers, they have the right political views, they have the right religious views, and everybody else is wrong because they're right. So I liked what she said about staying curious, but also just getting rid of that mindset of there's only right and there's only wrong, and I'm right and you're wrong.
It's a big problem. We can all identify it, but the world, is composed of shades of gray. But there is this increasing number of people who only see things that are black and white. And I think we all have to make an effort to get out of our individual echo chamber that we all live in, every one of us, and not just surround ourselves with people who reinforce whatever bias we happen to have. Cecily, what do you think about all this?
Totally agree, 100%, because I grew up as an Air Force brat, so I spent a lot of time around a lot of different cultures and ethnicities, and my mother embraced the fact that we wanted to learn more and see more, and which is why I'm a melting pot of wanting to know more about individual people. And I think the more that we're open about the conversation, just talk. It really is that simple. And I think when you do that, you're open to all sorts of ideas, possibilities, and other opinions as well.
Welcome back to What's Next. I'm Amy Sweezy, and today we're talking about having good conversations and the things that get in the way. Now, sometimes we're not even really listening when people talk, are we? Guilty, right? We're formulating our answer, our position on the topic while the other person is still talking, or yes, maybe that's just me. David McRaney is the host of a podcast that's called You Are Not So Smart. And he's also the author of multiple books, including his latest, which is titled How Minds Change: The Surprising Science of Belief, Opinion, and Persuasion. Now, he came on the Growing Bolder podcast to talk about our tendency to look for evidence that we're right and how to shift our conversations from debates to dialogues.
What actually is happening is you're looking at all the evidence available to you all over the internet and other places from sources you trust. And if it pings that certainty in you, then you say, oh, yes, this supports how I feel about this. This justifies my thoughts, feelings, and attitudes, and so on. And then when you meet someone who sees things differently, it feels natural to take those things that have served as justification tools for you and then dump them on the other person and say, see, naturally, you should just see things my way. Look at this. And then, of course, they throw a bunch of facts on you, and you're sending links to YouTube and on, and nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is because you're not opening up a space. You're not non-judgmentally listening to the other person in a very curious, compassionate, and empathetic way that gets to the reasoning that led to picking those facts instead of others, that led to that interpretation. And you're sort of facing off instead of getting shoulder to shoulder. And shoulder to shoulder, you can collaborate and try to explore a mystery together, which is, I wonder why we disagree about this. And that's the only way you can actually get someone to change their own mind, that's how all persuasion works. The other person realizes they can, they might, they ought to change their mind. And you can encourage that. And you can do that just through asking the right questions and taking the right sort of approach in the conversation space.
All right, group. What do you guys think? Any takeaways? Bill, how about you?
I kind of think we get so stuck in our teams. We pick a team, and it's team over the truth. We're not really interested in uncovering things. We're just wanting to defend, to protect, to justify whatever our team thinks. And what that does, it sets up that wall there. We're not interested in hearing what the other person says. We just want to protect our team at all costs.
And win.
I promise you, I can't understand for the life of me why it's so difficult. I remember going through my marriage counseling before the divorce, and like you said, Amy, I was like formulating my rebuttal and my response. I wasn't really listening because I wanted to make sure that, no, you see, he's wrong. He's wrong. But I think he said it accurately. Open up a space to dialogue. Why do we feel this way? It's hard, but I think it's necessary.
Well, of course, the bottom line is it's way too easy to disagree, and it is tough to create a true connection with people who think differently about issues that we're all passionate about, which brings us to our bold social clip of the week, a poignant reminder about what's really important in life.
I wanted to share a little story about a woman who I was treating who's dying, and she's very excited to be dying. She's very, very old, and she's had a lovely life, and she's ready to go. And I asked her, I said, do you have any advice or any tips for people? And she said, love everyone. Love yourself, love your life, and love all the people you come into contact with. And if you see anyone in the street, or if you have a neighbor who's struggling, reach out and offer help. Love fully. And I was like, well, that's some bloody good advice. And made me think about when I'm really old, what I want to think about, how I made people feel through my life. So, yeah, made me think about that today.
Well, welcome back to What's Next. I'm Cecily Wilson, and I have a question. Are you on TikTok? I hope so. You can find me there and Growing Bolder. Check out our TikTok channel, and also be sure to find us on all the other social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest. You get the idea. You'll find inspiring videos and memes and great questions like this one. Now, who, living or dead, would you like to have a conversation with? For me, I'd say my grandmother. There's so much about me that I want to know. I have so many questions that I don't understand, and I would just love to have a conversation with my grandmother, Rose Elizabeth.
That's such a great answer, Cecily, and I'm a little embarrassed about mine. I mean, I was thinking about this, and I kind of went, Charlie Chaplin? I mean, I think this guy was an artist, and he did social commentary in silent films. So every single theme was based on compassion, was based on understanding, on communicating on a very basic human level. And I would love to talk to him about what he saw in people that he was able to reach out to and move and make us aware of issues that people never even realized that they were interested in before. So Charlie Chaplin?
All right. I actually had a whole huge list, but I discovered that my list was people that I wanted to give me some information, like share some kind of secret, right? JFK, who really shot you? You know, all these conspiracy theory type things. But then I decided, okay.
He doesn't know.
I need to pick someone that I can learn from, right? That's the smarter thing. So I went with my brother-in-law, Steve. Unfortunately, he passed away from brain cancer in 2021. He'd had a stroke from the radiation, a couple of strokes, and so he couldn't communicate or speak very well at the end. And I would like to go back and ask him, you know, what could we have done to help you better? And that way we could learn from that to then help other people moving forward. So I'm going to go with my brother-in-law, Steve.
You know, I'm with Amy. I would spend an hour with my mother or my father before anybody else. But I have to say, as a journalist, I'd love to have a one-on-one, a three-camera sit-down with Jesus and clear a few things up. I think that would be important.
That was actually my first question, my first answer, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, how can you pass that up? Because here's the deal, folks. When it comes to religion, there are now more nuns than ever, and I'm not talking about N-U-N-S, I'm talking about N-O-N-E-S. Nuns is the official designation for men and women who believe in God but don't affiliate with any specific religion. There are more religiously unaffiliated Americans than ever before. They've kept the faith but the politics of religion, the divisiveness of many religious organizations has them disillusioned. We cannot let the voices of hate and division drown out the voices of compassion and conciliation. We've got to be more like Dr. King, who said, you've heard this quote, "I've decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. We'll see you next time.